All right. Good morning. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah. So today's session is going to be about our new PayPal server SDKs. So we're going to explore an integration. We'll do some quick intros. My name is Nathaniel Olson. I'm a senior technical product manager here at PayPal.
And I'm Patrick Powers. I'm the senior staff engineer on the server SDK team. So why don't
Yeah,
we get started?
absolutely. So we're going to tell you about our SDKs and why we think you should use them. Quick overview before we hop into the fun stuff. Details you should know. Our current server SDKs support our core APIs. That's orders, payments, and Vault. Eventually, we will add more. Just keep an eye on the blog, and you'll see those releases, but I can't give any details there. They're designed to make your life easier. They have built-in support for handling auth, throttling, common error codes, configurable logging, all kinds of little goodies. And they probably come in your favorite programming language. So we have 6 of them. You can see them listed up there. If you really like one that you don't see, come talk to me. I'm happy to consider it. Yeah, so with that, let's jump into it, Patrick.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the bulk of this talk is really going to be an overview of directly integrating with the PayPal SDK and some of the common use cases we have. So to start with, best place to find details about the SDK is the developer page. I'm sure if you're already integrating with PayPal in one way or another, you're familiar with it. We are located right between the REST APIs and the JavaScript APIs, and that takes you to our SDK developer portal. And this is a great resource for getting an overview of the endpoints that are available, the models involved, how to get everything set up. And what's really nifty is we've got coding examples in all 6 languages that we represent. And it's easy to just click through and figure out exactly what you're looking to build. So to start with, I thought we would go through a nice, simple Python integration.
What are we going to cover?
So we're basically just going to get a really simple checkout off the ground. So we're going to create an order, and then we're going to go and retrieve those details about that order so we can kind of see what we're working with.
That sounds great. Take it away.
First things first is we need to get the SDK into our Python application. So this is just a pretty straightforward Flask app. And I've got a nice little API stood up with some endpoints via Postman, and we can see, oh, look, we have some results. We're good. But now we got to integrate. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the How to Get Started section. And the first thing we need to do is, oh, I'm in .NET. That's not what I want. I want Python. We'll come back to .NET later. So I want to install our package. It's simple as copy and pasting into our terminal here. Now, I cheated a little bit. I wanted to get prepared off the ground before the presentation, so I already have it installed. But from there, we can scroll down and take a look at how we actually initialize things. And what's nice about this is we can copy and paste this directly, but I want to type through it a little bit so you can see one of the benefits of using the SDK with some of the auto-completion and type hints and stuff like that that you get. So right off the bat, let's go ahead and add our client. And right off the bat, we can see it's telling us everything we need to get this thing running, right? So we need some auth credentials, and we know our type for that. And right here, we just know we need our client ID and our client secret. And that's really the only data you need to provide to get running off the ground. So let's go ahead and plug that in. Oh, you know what? I'm putting this, I probably want my client IDs above this. And I want my secret. And these are just the environmental variables that I've defined based on the test merchant that I have set up and the test user details. And that's that for there. Now, what else do we need? We want to specify our environment. And what's nice about this SDK is that our environment configurations come out of the box. So we have production set up, we have sandbox, and these are all constants. You're not worrying about figuring out the exact values you need. And then finally, let's go through with some logging configuration and set our log level. For this one, let's just keep things debugged since I'm still trying to figure out all of this. I'm getting this integration working. And I'm going to set some rules around my request logging config. And you can see I get things like logging the body, logging headers. I can include or exclude some headers. And we're going to say we want to, log the body. And let's stick with that for now. So right there, everything we have, I am integrated with the SDK. That's all it takes. I have my authentication set up. The SDK itself knows the endpoints that it can hit. It knows the headers it needs to include. It knows we're using OAuth, so it'll automatically manage that tokenization back and forth. But I am ready to go ahead and set up a create order integration. So let's go ahead and do that next. So first things first, everything comes in a controller. So for our orders endpoint, we have our orders controller. Let's use some type hints for this. So orders controller, and I'm going to get that from my client.orders. And from there, I can go ahead and, set up our create requests. So first, I'm just going to have a nice object called collect. And this is going to be, I need a body. And I'm going to give it a type hint. So we're saying, hey, this is an order request. Use that constructor. And we can see right away, it has everything we need. I have my intent, I have my purchase units, my payment source. All of that's right there waiting for me. So let's see, this is just a nice simple checkout. So we're going to say my intent is to capture. And again, these enums are provided by the SDK to use. For purchase units, this is going to be a purchase unit request, another type. I'm barely typing. It's mostly filling in the stuff for me. Amount with breakdown, and we're saying, okay, currency, oh, that's not going to help. Code, I think I've got an extra line here. 1 second. Currency code equals USD. Value equals $50. And then let's go ahead and get the last bit of our application context in place, which is a order application context. And we can fill in the last of our details like brand name, the cool shop. And a user action here is going to be order application, context, user action. We're paying. And then the last little bit we've got here, our return URL. And we'll just type this in .com/return. And we'll fill in our cancel URL as well. And we don't need two equals. Let's close this terminal out. And that's what we've got. So we've got effectively our request here that we need. The last little bit I'll add in here is one header that we like to include to maximize what we're seeing. So return representation. And from there, we can simply say, all right, let's go ahead and get our order. Create order. You can see as I hit that controller, all of the endpoints that you're familiar with from the PayPal Orders API, create, capture, authorize, confirm, they're all right there waiting for you. And, oops, that's the wrong one. But we can create that order, and all we're passing in is that request we defined up there. And then let's go ahead and use one of our convenience methods to get our JSON out of it. And then let's return that response body. And we don't need that extra return anymore. So that's it. So we've got here the beginnings of a pretty simple checkout request. So let's go ahead and stand this up and see what we get. Oops. Oops. So it's already telling me, I got something kind of funny here. I think I might have forgotten a comma. Yes. All right, and let's see what we get when we make that call. Oops, something went wrong there, so let's go ahead and take a look. I think we probably have something extra here. 10 purchase units. Okay, so just to be on the safe side, I don't want to waste too much time because we got a lot to cover. I'm going to switch over to just the branch we've got it integrated already. You can see it's the same purchase unit request. We've got the same details. I added a little extra items here, but let's go ahead and stand this one up now. Try one more time. So we can see here, zoom in a little bit and bring this up. This is a typical order response that you're used to seeing. We've got our ID, we've got our intent, it was captured. Status created, this is it. So all it took really for integrating was a whole lot of type ahead, a whole lot of IntelliSense, and we've got a working integration.
So that was really fast, Patrick.
Thank you.
But let's kind of see what the point is. How does this compare to if you wrote this all directly and you didn't use the SDK? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for that, why don't we switch over to a different language, get a different flavor of integrating with the SDK. So I'm going to pull up, I've got a little bit more robust .NET app, just a regular web service written in C#. And for here, you know, I've got this manual integration. I have my own HTTP client that I've written. I've got my create orders. I've got all of these checks and a hand-rolled model. And so a lot of this, I'm creating sort of anonymous types to get JSON in. I'm having to manage serialization, having to add headers, having to define the endpoint itself. And admittedly, I wrote this and I didn't do the best job. I'm not using, you know, the right endpoint, but so I had to get this off the ground quick. And so we've got all this extra code. We've got all of these models that I'm hand rolling myself to try to parse out the response really easily. So all of this is what we want to remove and replace with a quick integration with the SDK. So first things first, we're going to get that set up inside of our program to pull that SDK in. And so it's going to be a lot of the same. You can go back and see, as simple as it is how to get started. I was on Python before. I can click on .NET. And for the sake of time, let's go ahead and just pull this over. So I can copy that in. I can move it right down here. And it's telling me, oh, can't be found. Let's go ahead and add that using statement. Again, this was pulled in just via NuGet when we set this up. And we're saying here, oh, we're missing something else. So your IDE tools know and recognize the SDK. It knows how to use these things. And let's go ahead and replace these first default values with our client ID and secret that we're already using. And then the last thing that we want to do is I'm using the out-of-the-box dependency injection that you get with a web service like this in C#. So I'm going to go ahead and add a reference to this. And I'm just going to make it a singleton. And we're going to say, what did I name this? Client. So now this will be available to any of my services that choose to pull it in. And so let's go ahead and grab our direct orders controller, and I'm going to leave this as is. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create and paste a new one in here. And let's call this we'll call it a rewrite orders controller. And let's see what we need and what we don't need, right? So let's go ahead and fix some of this. Got our controller, and I don't want to use this PayPal HTTP client that I hand-rolled before. Now I've got my server SDK client. We'll call this SDK client. And let's take a look. So I don't need to get this client anymore. I don't need to do this same intent checking the same way that I was before. Because I'm relying on the models I have. And then we're going to go ahead and see with all of this stuff down here, I'm going to get rid of the serialization. I'm going to get rid of the manual request. All of this is going to be replaced. So let's go ahead and get that out of here. And instead, first things first, I'm getting this order data from request body. So let's parse that out. All I really need from this right now is the intent. And what's nice about this is that I can say something like out, checkout, payment intent, because that's provided to me by the SDK. And I can say something like, hey, if parsed, then we're going to go ahead and set, or I'm sorry, if it wasn't parsed, if we failed to get something, then we're going to go ahead and just say, hey, we don't know exactly what that intent is, and we'll let the API figure out what to do with it. And then from there, this is just a whole lot of manual anonymous objects, but let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. So instead of just this random order, let's actually make it an order request, which is a type that we have available to us. And then what's nice about that is I had written this to match the original JSON that the endpoint takes, but now that I know I have an order request, I can fill this stuff in exactly with what I need. So I have my intent, and we're getting that from our enum. I got my purchase units, and it's saying, hey, that's not, that doesn't match anymore. And it doesn't, so let's figure out what we need to have in place. So instead, we can say something like, okay, we have a list of, and it knows already for me, a list of our purchase unit requests. Purchase unit request. This isn't an invoice NAD anymore. Let's get our types matching, our amount with breakdown, our currency code, and then one of the quirks of C# is that the value there is a context word, so we just have a M monetary value in front of it. Same thing with here, we have payment source, and then, need a hint here, payment source, PayPal wallet experience context. Oops, sorry, PayPal wallet. PayPal. I think I did this backwards. PayPal wallet, yeah. So we have our experience context, PayPal wallet experience context. And now this is where, again, I'm excited to get rid of all of these magic strings that I've defined. I can say preference, payment method preference. Got it right here. So let's say immediate payment required. Oop, we have so many enums, I clicked on the wrong one. So we've got payment method preference. There we go. You guys ever coded in front of 40 people before?
He's doing great, folks.
So we've got landing page next, PayPal experience landing page. And finally, shipping preference. But the whole point is that this is no longer stuff that you might want to, or you need to define somewhere. Even if if you're not doing it in the sloppy way like I have here, where I've got this method or this object defined inside of the method itself, if you have your own set of models and your own set of enums and all that kind of stuff, all of that disappears. And then these last two pieces, thankfully, I have those set. And then the last thing that we need to do is actually make the call. So let's go ahead and do that. Orders create input equals new orders create. Create input. And we need a body, which thankfully is our order. I think that's what we have it called up there. Yep. We want a request ID so that we can track this going through the system. And let's go ahead and just use a GUID for this. And last but not least, we want our return representation, our preference there. So we've got that defined. And finally, let's make the call. PayPal client, SDK client, SDK clients. Orders controller. There we go. Orders create async. Create input. Oh, create order. Aha. Tried to warn me. Create input. And there you go. And so I'm going to tweak this. Previously, I was returning this action result kind of thing, but now I have an actual response type provided to me by the SDK, so I can just fill this in. I don't need to do any of that. I did forget an await here. And then finally, create order result dot data. And that's it. I'm not going to worry too much about this error changing right now, but we can see we went from it's a little tricky to see side by side, but all of this extra method, all of this manual hand-rolled interface to effectively the same object definition, but with types to save us from ourselves, and really what amounts to 3 lines of code to replace all of this manual work. So,
yeah, that's amazing. And so if you have an existing code base, how easy is it then to just kind of rip and replace?
Yeah, it's really easy. One of the perks of the way that the SDK is built is that the endpoints are all modular. The SDK itself provides separate controllers for example, the orders API, the payments API. So I've got 3 other functions in here for capturing, for getting orders. And if I'm only ready to replace one for one reason or another, or I need to do a slower integration, I want to preserve my types in some spot, I can do that. I can have my existing integration alongside the SDK where it makes sense, which means that it doesn't need to be a one and done giant refactor.
Yeah, so as the product manager, that's like music to my ears, because I know if my team came up to me and was like, hey, we want to spend 2 sprints just replacing the whole code base with this SDK because we want to make one change over here. I immediately would be like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and it protects against and enables gradual migration for new features or new endpoints. So, as we mentioned, these are only 3 of the APIs that we have. We have plans to add many more of the PayPal APIs in the future, but they get bundled in automatically. But you don't have to set them up if you don't want to. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. But when the time comes, they're available to you. So it means that you get those latest and greatest features right out of the bat.
Yeah. So what about more advanced use cases, right? We've done a simple checkout. Maybe we're getting a little close on time. Maybe we can do a quick example of something a little more complicated.
Sounds good. So for the last one, why don't we take a look at something in TypeScript and Node. So what I have here is actually a sample app, and it's an integration with our new V6 JavaScript SDK.
So you can use our server SDK with our client SDKs?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
They integrate well together. You can learn more about the V6 SDK just next door at 11 if you're interested in that. And so what we have here really, I'll go ahead and spin this up. Oh, that's the wrong one I want. What I have here is a front end that's really just an example of our one-time payment flow, which is just our button. Oop, am I in the wrong? Oh, I forgot the HTML. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like. I've got to stand up my service, of course. Great, so we're set up. So let's go ahead and refresh this. Cool, so this is just, it's the button we all know and love. The difference, however, is that when it sets itself up, it's actually communicating with the server SDK to get our client safe token that we provide. We can go through the flow the same way. And this is just a fun test user. So we have created the order, we've captured it. That's the flow that we're all used to. But the difference is that under the hood, inside of our checkout, and I'm not going to type through all of this again. We've seen me integrate the order often enough. But we're integrating with our we have a client token. What am I looking for? Yeah, okay, so there we go. So this call, when we create that order, we're calling our orders controller that we're used to seeing. We're passing in our order request body that we defined. So that's the callbacks on the client side talking to the create order function that we have on the server side. So it's not new to integrate the client SDK with your own server, but now that integration comes a lot easier because the REST endpoints are already laid out for you. And so one of the other areas that I think would be useful to show is maybe one of the other endpoints that we support, which is vaulting. And so we've got another example set up here. Go ahead and pop over to our vault example. Let's get that started. So this is going to look really similar, but what you'll see here, something's not defined, and I need to create my setup token. So of that, and we'll see. What we've got here now is inside of our setup token, we have a vault controller. This is all the same kind of layout you're used to seeing, no matter which controller you're using, is our vault, our create setup token, the details that we need in place, and then the response that we're used to seeing. So go ahead, and I think I need to restart this guy. Too. So here you'll notice that this has to do more with one-time setup, faster checkouts, future payments, et cetera. So this is our save payment flow. And sure enough, let me do that one more time because I clicked away from the network tab too quick. But yeah, so we can see everything that we're used to seeing here. We've got our customer, our payment source, payer action required. Everything is exactly what we're used to. And we've got our Vault setup token spit out here. This is just an example of where you can get it. But all that went through the same services. And so that's it. That's where you're set. And I alluded to this a little bit, but one of the perks that you'll notice is we looked at 3 languages today. We looked at Python, C#, and TypeScript. And for the most part, the flavor of all of these SDKs is the same. They feel similar to write-in, with the only tweaks being ways to make it more idiomatic for the language. So it's not like you're writing TypeScript in 6 different languages or you're writing C# in 6 different languages. Each language adapts a little bit, but with roughly the same interface so that it feels familiar to hop around whatever you need. I don't think, it's pretty common for merchants, for any of us, to have multiple services written in different languages, but this way teams can communicate with a similar language, a similar interface that they're used to. So it reduces any of that stress. And I think that does it.
That's awesome. So it seems like we can kind of do anything with this SDK that the underlying API support, which is great. And so my understanding is part of that is because of how it's structured. So it's, pretty much API by API, wrapping those endpoints. It lets you kind of construct this and build the flow, which, typically we might say, oh, why aren't you putting together like higher order functions that handle a couple steps? And, that can be nice, but this gives you a lot more control while still giving you all the benefits of that SDK. And there's actually a new perk that we didn't plan on, but the SDK in this format is actually more AI friendly than it would be if all that was abstracted. And so even to the extent that what we've seen internally is that we're building a lot of our AI tools like the agentic toolkit on top of the SDK preferentially because it's just made it easier. So whether you're trying to handwrite these SDKs yourself or you're exploring with tools like Replit, or there's so many, I'm not gonna try.
Yeah, but
it makes it a great choice.
Yeah, and this makes it easy to, the agents that you might build or the agents that you might work with are going to be using the same code, the same kind of requests that you would be if you were doing it yourself. So it's all familiar.
Yeah, nice tight feedback loop. So we got about 10 minutes left. I'm wondering if we should just start doing questions.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So any questions? Yeah. Do you guys want me to talk about anything else?
What languages do you support?
Yeah, so we've got Python, PHP, Ruby, C#, Java, and I always forget one, TypeScript. Is that this? Did I say that already?
Did you? Yeah.
I always forget one. I always forget where I started. But yeah, so we've got those 6, and they're all at parity. And one of the nice things too is since we've got our the way that we generate these via API-matic, we have it set up so that when changes come into the endpoints themselves, whether they're updates or upgrades or bug fixes or anything like that, we can quickly generate the next version that we need across all these languages. So updates come quickly. We can set up that they come regularly. None of these should be out of date compared to what's against a direct server integration.
Well, and they're all at parity with each other too.
Yes.
Right. You're not going to run into a situation when you're like, well, TypeScript is up to date, but Python hasn't been touched in 6 months.
Yes.
Or Ruby is missing these features. Like they're consistent across all the SDKs. We get to rapidly improve them. It's very exciting. It actually makes my life very easy as a product manager. Big fan. Yeah.
Cool. I saw your hand first.
You mentioned from the 3 APIs.
Yeah, so the question was which three APIs are supported. So right now we have the Orders API, the Payments API, and the Vault API. So those are three. We're already looking at which ones are coming next, but all of the public endpoints on those, all of the models, it's a direct one-to-one support. So, and we are, yeah, so we're looking at what's coming next, and we're looking to, get as many as possible, because we want this SDK to be for, it's not necessarily designed to replace a RESTful integration if you are more comfortable manually doing that, or maybe there's a lot more restrictions on how you're integrating, but we want it as an option, and we want it to be as available and as robust as if you were doing it yourself.
And if there's endpoints that you're particularly interested in, please let me know.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
prioritization is the name of the game. I think you had your hand up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the past 5 to 10 years, there's actually been some kind of shift for payments specifically away from server-side SDKs towards JavaScript, making it more happen in the browser directly than the customer. So in some sense, it feels like a change of mindset. Could you explain what this means to the businesses on a higher level?
Sure. Do you want to talk to?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That still happens a lot, but there are still requests that have to be made through the server as part of the flow. And so, we see versions of these client-side integrations where like maybe 90% of the orchestration is happening in the browser, and then you're just like finalizing the transaction, right? That's the way that a lot of people are going to want to do it, but we felt like this was a good option to not only solve that last part of the transaction, but give people the flexibility to do different implementation choices if they want to. We still see people doing server-side integrations directly, and so we wanted to provide this choice.
Yeah, and again, I forgot, the question was,
Thank you, Patrick.
it seems like in the past, PayPal has been pushing a very heavy client-side integration and sort of moving away from server-side. So is this indicating a sort of change in the weather and now moving back? And one of the other things has to do with like if you're used to integrating with like the V5 client SDK, that's a very heavy SDK. It does everything, and it's very opinionated, and it can be intense, and it's really, really powerful. But what we're seeing now is we need to be a little bit more nimble and flexible to let to give some merchants more control over what their client integration looks like, instead of just relying on this thing to make all the decisions for it. And so, again, I'm previewing a different talk, but that's one of the benefits of the V6 client SDK, and then getting that to integrate with the server SDK, so you're just in more control over of what that integration looks like. So I think over time we've just seen that every merchant is a little bit different, and the more broad tools that we can give so that they can choose their own path to integrating while also making it easy, also keeping things like no-code solutions and other ways to integrate when it's necessary. We're trying to have like a large umbrella so that everybody can bring with their preferred method of integrating.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question had to do with migrating from maybe a direct manual integration to something like using the server SDK. And so there are a couple different paths, right? So I know PayPal's working on some migration tools, extensions, that sort of thing. The documentation itself in the portal lays out not necessarily migrating an existing one, but it has the clear example that will be like, hey, this is the server SDK way to do it, and it'll match up pretty closely with the rest documentation. So the structure of all these SDKs and all these endpoints is a one-to-one match with the REST endpoints. Whatever the function call is, however that's defined, the operation, the models, what's required and what's optional, all of that matches one-to-one. And so in terms of manually doing that switch, migrating, it's a really straightforward process of just wiping out whatever manual code you have written to enable and facilitate that transaction to something that the SDK can tuck away all of those models and all of that endpoint definition and that route definition, all that kind of stuff, so you don't have to think about that. And then the last thing I'll say too, I mentioned this when we were kind of walking through the migration that we did do. I'm just showing the program, that's not helpful. But when we moved to our rewritten controller, you can migrate as much or as little at a time as you want to. So you know, maybe you test it out with something a little bit less less complicated, like just let's plug in the get orders request and see how that feels and see if we like the models, see if that's quicker. But you don't have to disrupt any of your endpoints that we might not support yet, or any of your models that you might have added custom logic on top of for maybe you have a backend for a front end situation, or you have services talking to each other, and you know you've got your standard request object to domain to DT, all that kind of stuff. You can still include all of that in whatever you've got. I think you were gonna.
Yeah, and like a good example, say you wanted to start using the shipping callbacks that we like literally just came out, right? You could just go through and just change only that code to use a server SDK, and the shipping callbacks are already supported. So you can literally take this like topic by topic, piece by piece as you're touching code, instead of making it some giant refactor project that's hard to estimate and goes on forever and everybody's asking why it's on the roadmap. It gives you the option to do it, and it's not going to bog you down. You know, you don't have to argue the value prop. You can just kind of do it as part of your work, and it's not going to blow up your scope.
Yep. So that you could head straight to the developer portal, and then right inside server SDKs.
There's also public GitHub projects
yes.
as well, and you can find them in all of the package managers for the supported languages also.
So yeah, so all of our code is public for these, and it's the same. We use the same schema to generate both the code itself, the documentation, what shows up in the GitHub. So it's all lined up. You can poke through this stuff, and then we do monitor these repos for issue requests and that sort of thing that might pop up. So I think that's that.
I think we got time for one more if we have anybody. No pressure.
Yeah.
So Braintree has server-side applications. Are there any plans to sort of bring them all under PayPal or PayPal and Braintree?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I don't know. I think, as you would imagine, with any big tech company that has lots of brands, it certainly comes up from time to time. It gets discussed. I have no answer as to whether it's happening, though.
Yeah, I think the real answer, right, is.
You want to finish out your thought, maybe?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, this being a very, like, our approach for these SDKs has been very different than Braintree's approach, and so yes, historically, so we're learning a lot from each other in terms of, the needs that have sort of developed that have fueled how they build their SDKs, and sort of what we're aiming for with these. So I think, I have no idea if there will someday be the grand unified server SDK, but it's definitely, we're not ignoring each other when it comes to how we're doing these. I don't know if the question had to do with Braintree and PayPal SDK.
Yeah, and maybe I can kind of add to that. I think one of the things that we are working on is making sure that the coverage that we have in terms of capabilities and features and language support are unifying. So let's start there. Let's make sure that at least whether you are picking PayPal for small and medium businesses, or if you're a larger enterprise and you need Braintree capabilities, at least what you're looking at across the feature set is the same. And so that is definitely the direction that we're driving towards. Whether it's one SDK or two, I think as we start to see convergence on capabilities and features, we can have that discussion as well. I think you're trying to optimize for the target demographic, for your target user, and so there are some natural changes between what a small, medium business might need and an enterprise business might need. But let's start with a feature capability.
So I think we're at time. So thanks so much for attending. Thanks for your great questions. We'll be outside if you have any other questions or you want to just talk code or talk the SDK. So great, thanks. And go see the V6 client SDK next door at 11.